Greetings pimps. We're going to keep this one super short. This video is not going to discuss whether white privilege exists because that point is irrelevant, but simply that even if it does, that bringing it up in a conversation is not a valid logical argument. There is no reason to argue if it exists because either way it is not relevant to discuss in a purely logic-based conversation. It should be obvious that said term, if it exists, is not an objectively immoral act. Simple UPB. As one does not have any moral right to enact force on another which would be necessary to stop such privilege. This would remain the same for the so-called privilege of any race. Bear in mind that state actions are just that, state actions, and are objectively immoral just as anything the state does is. Using state actions to stop such privilege is objectively immoral, meanwhile having so-called white privilege itself is a null action, not moral or immoral. Thus at the end of the day, arguing over it is a waste of time, as the only so-called arguments against it are appeals to emotion or authority and not logic. It is also a null action, so to speak, as mentioned, so there is no further reason to discuss it, as null actions are not moral or immoral, so it does not matter if someone does it. Of course, said privilege isn't even an actual action, so discussing it in a logical manner is even more moot, as it could never have been rendered more than null from the very start. Arguing about white privilege is like arguing whether or not s'mores Pop-Tarts are the best flavor of Pop-Tart. By default there is no logical argument in favor or against it, thus talking about it is a waste of time in a logical sense in the context of debate. In short, no logical argument for or against white privilege exists, so only an NPC would use their time discussing it any further than this video. In fact, this video is already way longer than it should be. Reminder that this video is not taking a stance on whether it exists, as that is not relevant. It can be easily debunked without knowing whether it even exists. Anyways pimps, we out.